Welcome to ABA on Tap, where our goal is to find the best recipe to brew the smoothest, coldest, and best tasting ABA around. I'm Dan Lowry with Mike Rubio, and join us on our journey as we look back into the ingredients to form the best concoction of ABA on tap. In this podcast, we will talk about the history of the ABA brew, how much to consume to achieve the optimum buzz while not getting too drunk, and the recommended pairings to bring to the table. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and always analyze responsibly.
All right. And welcome back to yet another installment of ABA on Tap. As usual, I am your ever grateful co-host, Mike Rubio, with Mr. Dan Lowry. Mr. Dan, it's been a while, sir.
Very, very excited to be back. It's been a while since we've been in the Reptile studio, but we have a really, really good guest and really excited to end the year on a high note. We've had such a great year and going to go out with a bang.
You know, we've often talked about people that are double, triple threats, have a lot of credentialing, a lot of experience. We've had the pleasure of meeting autistic individuals who are also BCBAs. And then there's today, which is now our guest adds a whole other set of letters that really brings the skill set, I think, which must be amazing and tremendously unique for our field. So what I'm talking about here is somebody who is familiar from receiving services end, perhaps, and then is now delivering and designing those services. And then on top of that, has a set of credentials that allows him to understand the full family dynamic in a way that, again, I think is very unique. So very excited to talk to this young professional, this gentleman today. We thank him for his time. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Matt Tapia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Mike and Dan. Hi, everyone.
All right, go for
Matt
it.
Here.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks, Mike and Dan. Sorry, I went a little early there.
It is all
okay.
good, Matt.
It's all good.
Thank you for joining us. So what we usually like to do, Matt, is... Thank you again for joining us on a Sunday. Is get started with an origin story. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, you can start as far back as you want. Introduce the audience to yourself. We're very excited to have you on.
Yeah, well, thanks again, Mike and Dan. Appreciate the time. Yeah, so my name is Matt Tapia. And a little bit about myself. Well, a licensed marriage family therapist in Arizona and California. I'm also a BCBA. And yeah, I guess we can go back a little bit. I'm not going to try to go back too far. But short story, I guess I'll sum it up. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome when I was 7 years old. And it came about a little later, I guess, in life than most typical kids. But it was really noticed so in school, I was in first grade and, my teacher started, talking to my parents, noticing, hey, there's something going on here. It just seems really distracted in class, struggling to make friends. She could see the signs. I think at first I thought it was ADHD. So, talked to my parents about it. My parents were like, yeah, we kind of have the same thing at home. So they made an appointment with a psychiatrist, and then that's all she wrote. Not all, but I was diagnosed with Asperger's at the time, which come to know later would be part of that autism diagnosis with the DSM-5.
Right.
So, with the services I got, it was a lot different back then. This was maybe late 90s.
Okay.
So ABA wasn't quite as prevalent yet during that time. So my parents never heard of ABA. I never heard of ABA. The services were really limited. So the treatment at the time, for me at least, was basically medication, which is unfortunate.
Oh, interesting.
So first they tried it. Yeah.
So it's a stimulant medication like ADHD, kind of crossover off-label use of it. I imagine that's what they were trying at that day.
That is what they were. Yeah. So they tried Ritalin was the first one. I remember that very clearly, only because my parents would later tell me, "Oh, Matt, we don't like you on Ritalin. You like the zombie." Oh. And I said, "Oh, I didn't notice that." But I'm like, "Okay." So then they tried Adderall, and then eventually settled on Buspirone, which is an for anxiety, which I felt did nothing, but I guess they said, okay, that's helping a little bit. So I stuck with that for years. That's where we kind of landed on in terms of treatment, was just anti-anxiety, or I guess,
So behaviorally speaking, that's interesting in the sense that interoceptively, you weren't feeling a change, but your environment is saying, for lack of better phrasing, hey, we seem to like you a little better. Whatever it is you're eliciting from your environment, it's working better for other people. That's fascinating. I mean, there's a lot of analysis to be done there. What's your recollection of that? Did that make you feel somewhat conflicted that you didn't feel better per se, or maybe you weren't feeling badly at all, but your environment was telling you that there was some concern? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of insight there that I think you could provide our listening audience here.
Yeah. So at the time, I was young. I didn't really notice much. So I didn't really care, I guess. Like, I was just like, okay, my parents telling me,
that's actually great. You were doing just fine. Right.
I'm doing just fine. So I'm like, okay. I mean, did it help in some areas that I think could have been helped? No. I'll get into that in a little. So I guess the big thing is my parents noticed, my teachers noticed, of course. I didn't notice, but I was kind of content with it. But the part that really stuck with me that I thought I struggled with and I really wanted to fix was social emotional reciprocity. I struggled to make friends. I really struggled to understand people and connect with people. And that was so distressing for me growing up.
That leaves an impression that you had a drive to make a connection with people. And diagnostically, that might be conflicting for some of us out here and saying, well, maybe there's a social disinterest. That might be used diagnostically. What you're saying doesn't hold true there. You're saying, I wanted to connect. I just didn't know how to do so in a way that felt, reciprocally, mutually beneficial.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's a common misconception of autism, is that people with autism or autistic people don't want friends, don't want social connection. Yeah. And I think it's more of that skill of, no, we do. We just don't know how. And we don't have the skills yet to do that. And it was frustrating too, because it seems to come so natural to people. At least from my perspective, it was like, oh, these people get it so easily. And I'm like, why don't I?
It's almost a little frustrating. So this is your, what you're saying, this is 5, 6, 7 years old. You land on the Buse bar. Somehow your environment is responding or receiving that well. You're still sort of asking questions. Give us a little bit more. This is already off to a great start here. You're providing a lot of fantastic insight.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I want to also just, the disclaimer of like my experience is my experience. This is not every person with autism. Sure. But for me, I struggled with it a lot, and I kind of stumbled my way through it. It's like stumbling in the dark without a light, without a flashlight. And somehow you get things right by mistake, and other times you don't. And so I think I did try to overcompensate in a lot of areas. Like, okay, I'm struggling with this, so I'll focus on school. I'll try to do well academically. And so for a while, that was my strength. I really worked hard to get good grades, to please people, especially my parents. My parents probably didn't help with that, because they actually had contingencies in place for me to do well. Oh, you get an A? Here's $1. Here's $5. You getting on a test? Great. Congratulations. Here's a pat on the back, and here's $5 or $1. But if you didn't, there was punishment for sure. You grew up in that family, like, oh, you didn't get an A? You got a C? My dad was really strict when it came to academic performance. Like, you got to study. I remember staying up all night till like, it was 11 or midnight, just working on studying or doing homework, because it wasn't right. And so it was expected in my family to do, perform well academically, get good grades, go to school. Yeah.
So that was your currency that you found that kind of helped build your self-esteem, was that you were able to see yourself being successful through schoolwork?
Yeah, exactly. So that lasted for a while, and I still struggled to make friends growing up, even until high school. I just kept to myself, kept my head down, and just did schoolwork.
So with the friends piece, I think that leads to an interesting discussion about masking, because, better than anybody, or at least better than we would, that oftentimes maybe individuals on the spectrum may have some different social behaviors than individuals not on the spectrum. So when you started interacting with people, and you said even at this point you still haven't really gotten out of your social cocoon, when you did you find that you had to mask to relate to other people, and what was that experience like?
Absolutely. Yeah, I did. I definitely had a mask for a long time. So what was that like? Well, let's fast forward to college. College, finally being away from home for the first time. I don't think my experience is entirely unique in this way, but definitely engaged in a lot of binge drinking. Using alcohol as a way to like help
We've heard this.
help social, interaction. So like
That's so
hey,
interesting,
everyone's
Matt,
doing it.
that you mentioned that, because
Yeah.
one of the other autistic BCBAs that we had on,
Mhm.
why am I?
That's okay.
Like
We don't have to, we don't have to relate.
Yeah. Anyway, she talked about
Very
her
similar
her
experience.
collegiate experience.
Yeah.
A lot of alcohol in the beginning. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was like, ooh, okay, this is a godsend. Yes. So, at first, everyone, I went to college, everyone's drinking. So, like, yeah. And I felt, wow, okay, I don't feel this pressure anymore. I'm not, the anxiety went away. Ooh. So, yeah, I would say I definitely met criteria, probably for some kind of binge drinking disorder, probably in college. But I found it was easier to socialize, easier to make friends, go to parties.
Yeah, it puts you right in the mix.
It does. It really does.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay. And so I over relied on it without even realizing it at the time.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so that was, and that plus me also learning to mask was pushing myself to do things that I would normally say, no, I wouldn't do this. For example, I took jobs that involved working with people, customer service jobs where I had to sell to people. And I'm like, I cannot sell. I cannot, no, I couldn't, but I tried and sometimes failed. But yeah, no, I would mask in a lot of different ways. I would mask by, what was I going to do? I would not play up my interests. So I had like these very strong interests in things, and I would try to tone it back a little bit. Like, okay, yeah, like, oh, I'll pretend like I don't know much about this topic because I don't want to seem like I'm super like a nerd or a geek in this area. So like, I'll show I'll feign an interest, but not overplay. So that was one way of masking. Other ways, I mentioned the drinking. That was the big one, probably drinking.
The drinking's funny because I don't know if you watch. Do you like Bill Maher or Bill Mayer? I guess I don't know if you're familiar with him at all.
I've seen a few clips. I'm familiar. I've seen a few clips.
His episode last night, he had Scott Galloway on, the professor, and one of the clips was people should drink more, and he was talking about the process that Americans are drinking less, and it was just an interesting relating that. As Americans drink less, they become less social. And he was saying, well, drinking allows people to get out and maybe reduce their inhibitions little bit so they can interact more. And he was saying that in small amounts, alcohol could actually be a net benefit to society because it helps people interact more. It was just interesting. Made me think of exactly what you were saying.
No, that's really interesting, actually. I didn't think of that before. But yeah, I think in small amounts, it definitely helps people become more social, really willing to talk to other people that they normally wouldn't talk to, or talk about topics they normally wouldn't. It decreases that inhibition. So that's really interesting. Yeah.
Watch the Real Time with Bill Mayer from Friday night. You might find that interesting.
Oh, definitely. Thank you.
One other question. So you said that you've got jobs where you are interacting and then selling to other people. In order to sell to other people, you really have to relate to somebody and find out why they want to purchase whatever the product is, or, connect with them so I can tell you what about this product is going to be useful for your life. And I know you said you had some successes and failures. So can you talk about that experience of having to connect with someone?
Failures. Yeah. A lot of failures.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. Because I look at it back now, I'm like, dang, I was like a robot. So like I would memorize scripts. Like this is the way I did it. And this is probably the way we do it when we teach like social skills. I'm thinking now to like when we teach social skills to like
I think
our
we
clients,
do.
right?
Yes.
We do scripts. So I would memorize these scripts word for word and be like almost like reading up a card, like not my boss would tell me, well, I'm glad you're doing script, but you are way too robotic. You're too scripted. And people can see it. And I'm like, well, you gave me the script as a tool. Like I'm using it. Why isn't it working? And she was like, well, you dropped the script. And I'm like, but you told me to use the script. And so I was so confused. I was like, well, I'm using the script. I'm saying exactly what you told me to say. How is this not working? And she was like, well, you're not authentic. You don't care about the So to give some context to this, okay, I worked at Yankee Candle, and it was my first job, and it was in a mall. And I don't know how I got that job. I think I BS'd my way through it, to be honest. But she was like, you got to enjoy the product. So she was like, you know what? Take a few products home. Go enjoy it. And I'm like, okay. I had no interest in candles at this point. I don't care about it. But I'm like, fine, I'll try it. It's a free product. Why not? Let's try it. So I lit it up. I'm like, okay, that smells nice. Okay, I like this. My room smells nice and clean. And honestly, I was the only guy working there at the time. So I found it as a good way to relate to girls. You know, I'm like, ooh, okay,
Nice.
This is a good way to date.
There we go.
So I worked with a lot of coworkers who were girls. And yeah, I developed a crush on one of them. Hopefully, I don't think she'll ever listen to this, hopefully. But we were friends. I was definitely I don't want to use that word friend zone because I hate that word now, but we were friends. And yeah, we were definitely friends. But I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, and I think she was telling me one time, like, we were hanging out in my car and I had the air freshener. And she's like, oh, it smells nice in here. I'm like, yeah, the air freshener from work. For those of you who don't know, we have a candle, I think it's Midsummer Night or something. It's the black one.
Yeah.
It smells like cologne.
Sure.
So she really liked it. I was like, okay, this is a good way to get ladies. So yeah, I used that. Got some candles, made my place smell nice.
Well, now
I appreciate it. I was like, okay.
Now you could
and
sell.
Now I had a way to
now
sell.
You could sell.
Now I couldn't sell the women, but I could definitely sell the guys. Hey, like I see guys coming in. So I would stand up store. I'm like, hey, you got a girlfriend. You know what? Come in here for a second. Just trust me on this. And so I had a way to sell to people. I was like, hey, this will help you with the ladies. So,
man,
put this in your car.
What a fascinating, like little anecdote you're lending there. Again, in terms of how a topic like masking can be a little bit controversial. And then we can talk about how it also has some adaptive features and sort of runs across the board. And then what you're relating to and the connection you were able to make socially and now, trying to get these jobs, for whatever masking purpose, fully was in your mind. And then realizing that you weren't successful, but you having enough perseverance, enough of a motivation to then find that connection socially, which is now, hey, this girl enjoyed the way my car smelled, and now I can maybe sell it to that dude. That's really complex, right? And you made the illusion that how we do social skills training and how we do social skills training is nowhere close to what you described right now. Aside from the script.
Aside from the script. But that was the only part.
But that's kind of where I'm going. Is like, okay, what we can learn a lot from this. So, I mean, I don't, there's no question, but let's break that down. Like that, there's a lot to be taken from where it started with a simple masking motivating operation in a sense. And then all of a sudden you're successful somewhat at this sales position, which is also putting you in plain sight of social interaction, which is a great place to practice getting better at socializing. So again, a lot of steps that I don't know that we could recreate these things in treatment settings, but we could probably learn a lot from it, Anyway.
Maybe. That'd be hard. I'm thinking how we can recreate this now in a clinical setting.
So, again, what are the pieces that you had to connect there? Like, again, clearly anticipating the reinforcing consequence in terms of this girl sitting in your car now appreciating the smell. That would have been a hard one to conjure up or contrive, right? For any of us. But yeah, that's, again, super cool story in terms of like, this happened and then finally it clicked. And then I could not only be better at my sales position, but I am now having interactions that are less masked and maybe you feel more comfortable about them. And a lot of it's probably small talk, but it still feels good to just go through those motions.
Absolutely. Yeah. It felt really good to go through those emotions and feel successful. Like, okay, I finally, because at this store, right? Like, I mean, I guess in retail, like they put numbers, like they compare your average to, they look at your sales, and I was consistently ranked at the bottom for a long time. And then finally I started like, okay, I'm in the race now. I'm getting competitive. Like, oh, okay, I could sell now. So that really helped. I still struggled a little bit with it, especially when it came to women. I think the candle sales were like 90%, mostly women. And I struggled with that, of course. But no, I still worked pretty well. I was able to sell some guys. A lot of guys bought air fresheners from me, or the car fresheners. And I said, you can make your bedroom smell like that too. You can get a candle. Hey, there we go now. So now it's getting real. Yeah. And I was like 17, 18. I was barely in my first year of college. And so like, I think that was a big motivator for me too, is wanting a relationship, that's when I started, started dating and I was like a late bloomer. So I didn't start dating in high school. I tried, but it was not successful. But college was a successful time for sure.
There you go. Well, that's
Yep.
it's supposed to be that way. Yeah, it's supposed to be that way. Yes. That's good.
Okay, good to know.
Very similar. Yep. High school wasn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. But college, a different story. So you found yourself at college. What were you? So you're really good with the academics. What did you decide to pursue? Were you going the academic route, or were you doing more psychology? Like what? What did you decide to pursue in college?
That was I guess it was a mess of things.
Okay.
So I started engineering originally.
Okay.
I was studying biomedical engineering.
Wow.
And I thought I would like that. And I liked the engineering parts of it. I did not do well in math. I struggled. I hate calculus
Really?
to this day. Yeah, I didn't like calculus. That was so I actually failed a lot of my calculus classes in college, and was actually at the point where like, okay, you're going to be expelled from the university. You're on academic probation. I was also on disciplinary probation because my roommate left a bottle of vodka in our room, and I happened to be in the room at the time. So like by association, it was on me. So, with that, I was like, okay, you're on probation. And I think, I realized like, okay, this isn't the field for me. Like, this is not the major I want to be in. And I want to study psychology. I was like, let me try that. But the school made it really difficult to do that at the time because my GPA was so low. So I dropped out, studied community college for a little bit, and then picked up, and that's where I studied psychology. And then went back from community college to a 4-year university and studied psychology. And that's kind of where my love for psychology grew. And there, had a lot of great mentors in college, did a lot of great experiences, and discovered ABA in my final year of college. So
you were doing the engineering, but then you decided that you wanted to get out of that into psychology. What interested you in that switch to psychology as opposed to something random that also didn't involve math?
I would say probably myself. I was like, okay, have this diagnosis of autism or Asperger's syndrome, and I want to learn more about it. I want to learn how can I learn more about myself and deal with my own stuff, my own problems, and also help others because that's going to help me. Okay. So it's kind of selfish reasons, really. Very selfish. I think that's why a lot of us get into this, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah. A lot of therapists probably get into this for similar reasons, right? We all have our own stuff. And so I was studying college, I was studying psychology in college. And I remember, how did I get into ABA? Well, this is fun. So I took a human learning class, I remember, taught by Sean Laraway, who's a behaviorist who studied at Western Michigan with Jack Michael. And he was just teaching, and this made sense to me. I remember like taking the class, I was like, ooh, I love this. I can understand this. It was my first class I felt passionate. I'm like, okay, this makes sense.
It spoke your language.
It spoke my language. I was like, ooh. And then I ended up asking it, seeing if I could become a research assistant for him. So I helped him in their lab for a little bit, did some projects. I think we were studying polysubstance use, drug use, something like that. And then I found out about ABA from my younger brother, actually. So my younger brother, Andrew, was studying cognitive science at Irvine, UC Irvine. And he got a job after he graduated. He got a job working as an ABA with the company, and he told me about it. I saw him working, and he posted on social media. It's his first big boy job, and I was like, "Ooh, okay, tell me about that." Because I'm like, "You're working with autism? I want to do that." So he told me about it, and I Google searched it, applied to the first thing that popped up, and started doing it ever since. Back then, they called this
interventionist, maybe?
There's the BI, behavior interventionist.
Before the RBT.
Yeah.
This was before the RBT.
I was one of those too.
Yeah, probably interventionist. Yeah. This was back in 2012, maybe 2012. So back before they had that credential. And so I learned about it, learned about all the stuff, and did it for actually about 6 years as a behavior interventionist. I worked at a few different companies though in that time. But that's when I really discovered my love for ABA, behavior science. This is what, teaching that class. So not teaching, but taking that class. Yeah. We did a project on ourselves to so you have to pick a behavior of yours. You want to increase or decrease. You got to design a plan and take data on it. So I was like, I picked exercise because at the time I was a little chunky, I was a little overweight. Still am, but that's okay. And I was like, yeah,
you look good, man. You look good.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was like, I'm going to do exercise. So I want to increase exercise, right? So I yeah, I chose exercise. This first minor walking, going to the gym, took data on it, both duration data, I think, and frequency data. Presented it, and we had to design a reinforcement. I think it's like a behavior. Well, it's like you had to design a reinforcement plan. Like, okay, what's your reinforcement? What's going to help you get there? And of course, the graph looked beautiful. Oh, it's going up. Okay, beautiful. Sure enough, that when the class ends, it goes away. There's no more contingency, right? Because there's no contingency because it's not only was it I wanted to get more fit maybe, but the grade was what they could actually. It was really the grade of the getting the A that was the reinforcer for me.
But once you lose that weight with those candles, then that's the that's the
you drop a little weight. You got to buy more candles and more air freshener, I presume.
I have a quick. Yes. So you started in the ABA field. We've interviewed, like I said, a few people that are on the spectrum as well. And there's some interesting perspective because certainly it gives you the ability to relate. So did you like juxtapose your ability to relate with, was there any difficultness of trying to see them through their lens versus like your lens, right? So saying like, well, this is how I went through things, so I would do it this way, so this is what I suggest to you. Does that make sense of what I'm saying? Like experience versus
I think so.
attribution? Yeah.
I think that it was, and this is kind of where I learned, like, oh, if you met one person with autism, you met one person with autism.
Sure.
I did try to relate to these kids. I was like, okay, how was I like back then, or when I was their age, and what was I going through? And wow, I think I've learned this more. I was humbled quickly, just because because I was on the spectrum doesn't mean I can always relate to these kids. I did with some kids. I think it gave me more patience and understanding, more so rather than more patience and understanding. I was like, okay, because I remember what helped me out when I was a kid, and I had a school counselor in grade school that was really patient with me. Like, I mean, we wouldn't do that. We'd play like board games. I'd get pulled out of class for like maybe 20 minutes, play a board game or play like checkers, and then go back to class. But just the patience, the understanding that was the most helpful part for me. So that's what something I could give to the kids I was working with, is that I could be patient, I can be understanding, I can create fun. And I think that, and it taught me the importance of the relationship. And I think that's, we say, at least how I go, where was I going? Oh yeah. One thing so as a BCBA now, one thing I tell all my RBTs is the most important intervention you are doing is the relationship between you and your client, your patient, your child. You guys, that relationship is, this is probably a hot take or controversial maybe, but that is more important of a variable than any other intervention you're doing by far. And so I still tell that to this thing, like, you need to have that rapport. It's not just, it means pairing with reinforcement, but it's not just pairing. It's so much more than that. It's, do they trust you and can you trust them? That is the crux of it, really. Yeah. And so I think that's something I learned early on that was not valued very much, at least in my first ABA jobs at all. I mean, it really wasn't. It was like, okay, here's the techniques, here's the positive reinforcement, here's prompting, hierarchies, here's your DTT, your NET, your PRT, all these acronyms, right? But I was never taught to have that real, like, yeah, we talked about pairing briefly, but not really building that relationship with a kid.
So one more question. Sorry, Mike. I'm hogging all the questions here.
You're good.
So we did an episode. I want to get your opinion on this. So you talk about the relationship building with the RBT. We did an episode called RBT Person or Service. What is your, and we spent a couple of hours, I forget if it was a 2-part episode or not. We spent at least 2 hours talking about that. What is your thought? Is the RBT a person who comes into the house that provides services, or is it a service that could be provided by any person?
That's a wonderful question.
We're glad you think so.
I think it's a great question because it's really getting me thinking here. And I want to lean towards, I like this, actually, I was going to talk about this, but this idea of paradoxes and, or dialecticals, opposites, that seemingly be two different things, but really you can have both, the power of and not just or. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's both a service and a person. You have to be human. You have to be a person. You're there as a relationship. You have to care about this person. I think that's fundamental. And you're also doing a service because you're implementing interventions and you're doing things that are of a service to someone. it's both. And that's kind of how I see therapy. Is I see all therapy, even my marriage family therapy. I think I see it as both. That, if you ever have an RBT or you're working with an RBT who doesn't, is doing the, I don't want to throw the RBTs on the bus. I hate doing that. I value RBTs, but once in a while you get an RBT who's like clearly they're in this field, but they're here mostly because they know how to pay bills. This was an easy job. This was an easy job to get, and you could just tell their heart's not in it. They're doing it. Yeah, they're going through the motions, but you can do the interventions and go through the motions, but you can feel it. It's the rapport is not there. The relationship's not there. They even don't want to be here, and you can feel that. And the kids can feel that too. And it's just not going to be as effective.
Yeah.
It's not.
You're saying both? Yeah,
So,
I think
I'm saying both. Maybe that's a cheating answer, but I'm saying
agree.
both.
No, we agree.
The field kind of makes it unfortunate
Just
that
a
it's
service.
more it's a service, and a lot of the companies, the first company that Mike and I met at that we left, one of the main reasons that I left is they literally said to me it's a service and it should be interchangeable. I didn't necessarily agree with it, meaning that anybody can go implement the service, and I didn't agree with that. So we had a good discussion about that. I do agree it's both. It definitely takes some nuance for companies to just make sure that they can provide the person with the training and the credentials and the motivation, like you said, to make sure that they're delivering the service that's becoming of the company. Because at the end of the day, the RBT is the company. That's who's in that client's house most of the time. You can have the best BCBAs in the world, but if you have crappy RBTs, doesn't matter what the insurance reimbursement is, whatever, that's going to reflect poorly on your company. Thank you for that, Mike. 100%. I'll pass it to you. I know you got a lot to talk about.
Oh, well, no, I have to talk about this a little bit.
Okay.
No, but I think that was our concern is just that. So to your point, I do think that RBTs should be interchangeable. And then you made this clear, given that they've been provided the adequate support and training to develop, to match up to the other person they're supposed to be replacing. And that's where I think our industry falls short. That's where I think we like to do a lot of work and saying, no, you can't compare somebody who's been doing this 3 years to somebody who just did their 40-hour classroom training. There's certainly exceptions to that rule. There's certainly a lot of people with some deep intuition that are very intuitive in their work and that are very child-oriented, for example, that know how to play, that have a lot of those unteachables. And sure, maybe those people step right in. They can almost fake it a little bit because they're interested. But yeah, we lean on the fact that, sure, you have to cultivate that person to be able to provide that blanket service in a way that you can say, yep, that person can do something that's equivalent to that other person, although we hope they're going to be different enough to promote that generality across those people. So, yeah, no, we agree. Your answer was spot on. There's no right or wrong answer here, I don't think, either.
Right. No,
but
I agree.
Talking about intervention and treatment, you mentioned that school counselor you made a connection with. Tell us a little bit more about what that meant. Age 7, you get this diagnostic label. That means something in school. That means something now different. Tell us a little bit about your experience, what you remember being, more of what you remember being fruitful, and then maybe walk us into some of those things you may have experienced that are modern day concerns and grievances with the neurodivergent community, for example, and them saying, hey, this ABA stuff is flat out evil, which, I can't agree with that statement in a blanket form. However, when I listen to those people, I can 99% of the time go, oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I've done that before. Oh, man, I'm glad we stopped doing that. So, again, there's a lot, we're glossing over a lot of things here. Fill in some of the blanks for us.
Yeah. Man. So I'll start with what I remember most about seeing that school counselor was just how I felt. And I felt valued. I felt seen. I felt trust. I felt safe. That was a cool thing. And I don't remember I remember board games. That's what I remember. I don't remember even her name because I was so young. I don't remember exactly what she said. I don't remember the words, but I just remember feeling, I feel safe here. That was the biggest takeaway. And I think that's such an important thing. That's a lesson for me to carry. Like, that's what I want my clients to feel like. This person cares. And that's what I felt. So that's pretty much it there. So to answer the second part about, I guess, getting into the anti-ABA side of things. I've gone back and forth a lot. I've had a lot of change in this. So, when I first became a behavior interventionist, when I was first in ABA, I drank the Kool-Aid hard. I was like, ABA is the way. It's going to save the world. It's the end all be all of all things, right? Very rigid.
You're in good company. Right? You're in good company.
And then, as you go on Facebook, as you do, right? And you join these communities and you have these people and just, popular group of different people, parents, people, autistic adults. And they're like, you know what? I had ABA as a kid. It was evil. It was abuse. And I look at it and I'm like, well, part of me is like defense, like, I can see where you're saying that, but, and then it's not, it depends. I came up with all the arguments you could say. It's the people, who's intervened, it's who's doing it. That's not real ABA. That's, that's Lovaas, that's, which is no one's doing Lovaas nowadays, right? And me saying that was from the 1970s. And then I had a hard look at myself. I was like, well, actually, I've done some things I am not proud of.
Sure.
Yep.
Escape extinction was a big one. That was the gold standard. I was told by my BCBA, this kid is refusing to eat. You hold that food up there and you don't move it away. You just hold it and you wait. And I remember doing that for an hour, 2 hours. And I'm like, and I would try to get fun. I'd be like, choo, here it comes. My BCBA was like, no, Matt, just hold it there. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, she's like, you're removing it when you're doing the choo-choo. You're negatively reinforcing. I was like, oh, okay. I'll just hold it there then. And I'm like, fine. I'll try to get fun at least, but okay.
I remember waiting an hour and a half for a kid to eat a strawberry, which I've shared on this pod before. So same thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I asked, okay, why are we doing that? Like, is this something the parents want? And she's like, yeah, the parents want this. This is what the parents want. They want him to eat this food. We're going to make him eat this food. I'm like, oh. I mean, at least we didn't shove the food in there, but still holding it in front. The kid sitting at the table in tears, crying, wanting to leave. And I had to redirect them back to the table, hold the spoon with the food in it. I'm like, oh, it was so crushing. And at the time, though, I'm like, I'm following the instructions, so I'm doing what I need to do. And, you rationalize it. This person who's an expert told me what to do, so they must be right.
Yeah. I
didn't question authority back then. Which I should have probably, because, we learned all about the Milgram experiment in psychology class. But there I am. One of the little...
you got to shock the person. They got the wrong answer, man. You got to push the shock button. Come on, Matt.
Oh, yeah. So I would argue a lot with people online is the short story. I would go back and forth like, hey, it's not abusive. But then I also realized I never received ABA as a kid. And so I didn't have the same experiences that they did, and so who am I to tell them what their experience is? And so I went through a lot of cognitive dissonance. I was like, well, I do ABA, I'm autistic, and the way I do ABA can't be that bad. But I try to rationalize it in my head. I would do a lot of mental gymnastics. I was not proud. I was very conflicted, but I would argue still with everybody online. I got kicked out of a few Facebook groups doing it. Nice. For sure. Nice. Which is nice.
That's a badge of honor. I think that's a badge of honor, man. You should put that in your background.
I should. Got kicked out of this and this and this ABA group.
You should see what happens when we post episodes on Facebook, even if they're talking, I wouldn't say negatively about, but critically about ABA. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we would get kicked out of the groups because people don't even want to listen or read them. But it's like, this is even about ABA. It's terrible. But go ahead. Yeah. Totally hear you on that.
No, yeah. And, maybe we need to, rebrand or anyways. But, okay. So then as I kept going, we got more into the field is going more towards assent-based. You have compassionate ABA, which I wanted to bring up, which I really enjoy. I like the way the field's going. I think when you learn better, when you know better, you do better.
Yeah.
And I really embraced assent. I was like, yeah, duh, we should be doing that. It makes sense. I'm surprised we haven't addressed it sooner. So I like to say that I do those things.
Well, what's your company's name and my company's name?
Well, we're Ascend.
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 But so get higher based on the idea of ascent. There's a play on words, right?
Ascent.
Now, I like the game you're pitching because now you alluded to Lovaas. It's easy to rebrand, to your point, but not do anything differently. Mm-hmm. And then what you're talking about is I was a misfit in this place to begin with. So I was already talking about that different stuff, knowing that maybe we were applying these very powerful contingencies in this very blanket form because we're also socially talking about populations that were otherwise marginalized that are now up to a norm. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think historically, and I've talked about it here, I think historically there's a lot to be said for society, greater society, and I'm not making any excuses for anybody, because I think as a whole we can be gentler, more compassionate, especially to this idea of, now the tails on a normal distribution, to use that term mathematically. But the idea that, right around the time that Lovaas was starting his thing, for example, I think you still had something like upwards of 90% of individuals with then so-called childhood schizophrenia, which then became the autism diagnosis in 1980 and the DSM-3, the revision, were ending up institutionalized. So we're talking about Civil Rights Act, a lot of those places closing down in terms of hospitals. So everything just kind of flows together, So it's interesting to think about the fact that this ABA stuff, and I could argue, and I'm sure people could argue against it, but it was very prominent in bringing the civil rights of certain populations in society up to a different standard. But then to our greater point, I think we're making here, if you just stick to that initial catalyst, you're still treating people the same way that they were before you brought them up, or you were able to integrate them better into society. So I've said a lot there. I don't know if it makes any sense, but that's where I think that it is important to know better. And then maybe the argument could be made that the criticisms have been a little harsh, but it is up to us to make sure that we're adapting and we're evolving and that we're actually innovating. I know that innovation is a nice buzzword we all kick around, and then, okay, are you just adding a cent to your pamphlets, or are you really changing your methods and procedures? And I don't know what your experience with that is. Again, I packed up a lot there. You guys help me unpack it.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So yes, I think you bring up some good points about a lot of companies just putting a cent on there. Oh, we're a cent base. And then on the pamphlet, right? No change. It worked for a lot of those companies. Absolutely. And I think it's really prevalent, actually. Now that I think about it, every company I work for, yes, they talk about a cent. And
it's the same.
It's not part of the culture. Yeah. It's not ingrained at every level. It's like, okay, here's a pamphlet on a cent. Here's a presentation on a cent. And then we're done. And we never talk about it again. It does become an afterthought. I think at least companies I've worked at, it's mentioned once, you put it on the pamphlet, and then you forget it. So we have to continually revisit it, keep practicing it, call it out when we don't see it being practiced, practice it ourselves, acknowledge when we haven't practiced it, and see if we can do better next time. And I to the point also about, ABA's abuse. Well, that's feedback. That is valid feedback. And maybe it's not packaged in the way we like to hear, but we can't discount the experiences that ABA has caused harm to many individuals. And so as a science, we have to learn from that. We have to move forward and, to do better and learn. We learn new, more compassionate methods. I think, as long as we can move forward in the field and we're not staying stagnant, and we're dropping the things that didn't work and bringing up new things that are working. Yeah. As long as we remain open-minded and adaptive, willing to change, I can get into an act thing about this, like having that psychological flexibility to be saying, okay, maybe this didn't work, so now we're going to pivot into this new way of doing things, I think is really helpful. So, I think that should be.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit, on the ACT methodology? I know that's been something that's been fairly prevalently discussed on the podcast, so would love your take on that. Please.
I love ACT. Yeah, I love ACT. I actually use it pretty much almost every session that I see adult clients. And in my family guidance or caregiver, family, whatever you want to call it, parent training. So I can elaborate. So with ACT, right, this whole goal is psychological flexibility. What is that, right? It's these set of processes, these repertoires that when practiced can help you to be more adaptive, take flexible, just take different perspectives, hold contrary ideas together and still find wisdom in them. So, I practice it myself every day. I think to be able to do ACT, you have to be able to do it on yourself. I know you've talked about it in the past on the podcast. I thought I'd bring it up because it's one of my interests.
Yeah, please. We don't know nearly enough about it, so whenever we come across somebody that's into it.
It was to open up the forum. Yeah, please talk about how you use it in your daily practices.
So how do you use it? So the way I see ACT is that there's these 6 core processes. Well, I like to call them repertoires. They're behaviors, they're skills. and you practice them, right? So I'll talk about the first one. I guess the first one, one of my favorites is cognitive diffusion, being able to get distance from thoughts. So part of that is in your daily life, noticing thoughts, just being aware of them. And so I really love the strategy of saying to people, catching yourself having a thought like, okay, what am I thinking right now? Well, I'll give you an example. Right before this podcast, I was like, wow, Matt, you're going to say something really stupid online here. You're going to make a fool of yourself, right? Every time you're going to make a fool of yourself, right? There we go. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, see, so, I struggle with imposter syndrome really hard. That's probably why I got so many credentials, because I had to prove to myself and other people that I know what I'm talking about. So I can't just get a BCBA. I also have to get my MFT as well to prove that, hey, I am credentialed. I know what I'm talking about. And I think I was proving it to myself more so because I felt like I'm an imposter here. So that voice comes up, reframing it, or not reframing, but so I would say, I'm having the thought right now that I'm going to mess up this podcast, you guys. Oh, I'm having that thought right now. Just labeling it, tacting that thought. Okay, it's a thought. It's there. It's verbs. It's words in our head, but I'm still going to do it. I'm the committed action piece. And the reason I do committed action is because it aligns with my values. My values are, I want my voice to be heard. I want to not stay quiet anymore, right? I want to be out there. I want to show up. I want to be present. I want to connect with people. And so that helps that value, remembering that value, using the cognitive diffusion strategy can really help you to stick to your committed actions and do them and help you improve your life. And so I really love that because it's helped me deal with a lot of the things that I struggle with. With autism, I also struggle with anxiety a lot. It's probably why I specialize in anxiety as a therapist. That's one of my specialties. I label it. Anxiety is one of my specialties. Depression is one of my specialties. Autism is one of my specialties because I struggle with all three of those. So I really get in there with clients and I'm like, yeah, I'm here with you. Like, I know you got those thoughts. You have that voice in your head. I have a client. So we work on bringing this out. And so what I do in therapy is in my marriage and family therapy is I'll help bring this out in clients. I'll be like, okay, I'll pick it out in line when they're talking to me, right? I just pick out where I'll write down a word, a thought that they say, like, I'm too old. I had a client tell me that. This client's probably younger than me. They're in their 30s, and they're going back to school and they feel they're too old. I'm like, okay, there's a thought right there. Let's write it down. Okay, it's there. Let's do some cognitive diffusion around it. I want you to say, I'm having the thought that I'm too old. Say that a few times. Repeat it, the repetition. What was it? I think Steve Hayes does this in his TED Talks. Like, repeat it over and over and over until it loses its meaning, right? Write it out in bubble letters. I don't know. Put a voice to it. Say it. My favorite is, it's because it's the one I can kind of have to. But I'll put it in celebrity voice. So one of my favorites to do is Arnold Schwarzenegger because he has such a distinct voice. So I'll say, I'm really old right now. I'm so old I can't go to school. And I'll say that to my clients. I'm like, now you try that. And they say it and they look dumb and they're like, no, this is dumb. I said, okay, now say that thought out loud. This is dumb right now. And so I'll keep playing like that. I'll be like, let's take those thoughts. Let's mess with them. Let's play with them. Let's sing them out loud. And so I do that in my daily life. I'll sing thoughts out loud. I'll go on walks and I'll have these thoughts and I'll be like, okay, let me sing it out loud. Let me put the phrase I'm having the thought of that in front of me. And I'm like, okay, just a thought. Doesn't need to help direct my actions.
What a cool connection. Now, because ABA can be so sterile at times, this creates such a cool bridge between the whole idea of action and thought from like a mentalistic perspective. Like, what a cool connection. And then furthermore, we might have to do the rest of this podcast with you doing the Arnold Schwarzenegger voice. I don't know if you're up for that. That was pretty fantastic, man. That was. We'll bring it back here and there. I'll cue you. I'll cue you.
I also am gonna have to reach out to you after the podcast because I was somebody who never really experienced anxiety, but recently that's been creeping up. So definitely something that's prevalent. So I don't know if you're taking new patients, but let's chat on the side.
Well, without taking getting too personal, but you can if you want. Let's talk about that behaviorally, because that's something that, say, educationally, we walk into settings as behavior analysts and somebody says, yeah, this kid has anxiety. And then depending on what kind of a purist you are as a BCBA, you might be like, well, that's not a behavior. Okay, that we're all talking something. We're all talking something that we're describing differently. Yeah. So give us your impression on that, because I do like the way you're bridging those things together, and you've got personal experience. So what does anxiety mean behaviorally to you?
Sure, yeah. So I'm not going to describe it. I'm going to try, but
describe it however you want.
Yeah, no pressure.
So you can think of anxiety as, well, it's like a behavior pattern. So like, I'll describe it. So, right, you have these behaviors. Actually, I like to share this. There's a graph. You can look it up online. The cycle of avoidance. This is one thing I like to share with a lot of patients.
Cycle of avoidance.
Basically, what it is there's an antecedent, right? Something that might trigger anxiety, this emotion, this feeling. Let's call it an antecedent, right? So for me, I'll say talking on this podcast, right? There's the antecedent. Okay, you have to talk on this podcast now to people, and I'm comfortable talking with you guys, but like, the fact that it's going to be heard by people kind of makes me a little nervous. So there's that, right? There's the antecedent. Then there's the behavior. Usually for anxiety, it's an avoidant behavior. Something, not doing it, right? Not, I'm going to opt out. I'm going to avoid this. Steve Hayes does a great job of talking about this in his TED Talks about like how he would have grad students give his own talks because he wanted to avoid giving the talks. Social anxiety or performance anxiety, whatever you call it. So usually it's an antecedent trigger, right? And then there's a behavior, avoidance. Let me get out of this. And then there's a consequence, which is relief, negative reinforcement. Mm-hmm. And so it's that cycle that keeps going over and over, right? And that cycle builds and it reinforces the avoidance. And so next time that happens again, you're more likely to avoid. And the anxiety, the emotion gets bigger and bigger. It gets stronger and stronger. Because you're getting rewarded by avoiding it, that negative reinforcement, it's affecting your brain, because you're removing, particularly like decreasing cortisol, because that's a stress hormone. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Cortisol is decreasing, relief, and you're increasing dopamine and serotonin there. So it's going to activate the reward system. So it's like, oh, okay, got out of that. Woo, I'm feeling better. I'm going to keep doing that. So the body, you keep doing that over and over again. That's anxiety. It's that pattern over and
So the idea that somebody behaviorally might come in and simply impose a certain behavior to then have access to reinforcement is counterintuitive to the dopamine part. It's actually adding more cortisol. I'm really glad the way you described it, because I think that's kind of where I was going, is in saying, and I was just in a meeting this past Friday at a school where, and I love educators and teachers, I have a tremendous amount of respect, but this can be tricky for them in terms of like wanting to impose discipline or rules. Yep. And in saying, I know that what I'm telling you to do feels like you're succumbing and you're weak in the light of that escalated behavior or that anxious behavior, but just telling a kid who's avoidant that he has to do something, we can do better than that. How do you make them comfortable in that situation, which they're otherwise trying to avoid? And this kind of harkens back to what you were saying with acceptance and commitment, the idea that if now I can be at ease with this thing that I'm otherwise avoiding, I might have a chance to go through with it. But the idea that I can't be at ease at all with this thing that I'm avoiding, and then somebody is just pressuring me to go to it and even hanging out some sort of extrinsic reinforcement, that might not make the difference. It might actually increase the anxiety.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly right.
Let me add another caveat to that without making it too much of a Dan therapy session. I think the things that cause me anxiety, and again, I would have labeled it completely how you did with my ABA mind, always putting it through the ABC contingency, are more of things that I can't control. So, for example, like, this is going to sound ridiculous, but my girlfriend got chickens a while ago. A couple of times they got like attacked by raccoons at like 3:30 in the morning, and I just wake up to this like terrible sound. So sometimes now when she's like gone, I like can't sleep because like I'm just like playing that in my head, right? It's only happened like a couple of times, so it's really infrequent. Or like with the company and insurance changes, like we've got one insurance moving to another insurance. Are they going to take us in network? I've done everything I can do, but now it's on them. I mean, certainly I could send follow-up emails that aren't going to do anything. I can't really avoid. I'm just sitting here like, what's going to happen? Is this going to happen? What's going to happen? Or like the other day with like the kiddo, like, are they going to stop the contract because he's not coming? Like things that I have no literal control over. So I don't necessarily, the last thing, like, we have a dog who's super friendly. One time he jumped on a kid being friendly, trying to get a ball. And now I'm always like, if I'm taking him on a walk, is he going to like jump on somebody? That I do have a little control over, so I can take him on less walks. But the other things I don't have any control over, but I'll just be sitting at night sometimes just like ruminating on it. What are your thoughts on that in terms of the anxiety spectrum, or maybe even the ABC spectrum, on things that we don't have much control over?
Yeah. Well, from an ACT perspective, we always want to embrace what we don't have, like acknowledge we don't have control over it, embrace it, and accept it. Acceptance, right? That's one of the other processes of ACT. It's in the name. Accepting what is out of our control and recognizing what's in our control. I always like to do this little bubble, like Venn diagram thing, where I show clients, here's what's in your control, this bubble. Here's what's outside your control, and it's outside of the bubble, or something like that. And helping just recognize it, but also recognizing acceptance doesn't mean you're giving up. It doesn't mean you're, just saying, okay, it's out of my control. Why bother trying, right? Why bother doing this or that? It's not that. It's accepting the situation for what it is in a non-judgmental way. Being open, like, I think literally what acceptance means is, it's like, I want to say this right, is to take what is offered. Like, okay, this is the way things are. Take it when it's offered. And then we have some choice there, how we want to respond to it and what's in our control. And we can choose to ruminate. Well, we don't choose to ruminate, I guess. But we can choose how we want to respond to it emotionally and behaviorally. Like, we could choose like our actions from it. Yeah, I would argue when you ruminate a lot, you're actually in some ways still avoiding it, because you're doing an avoidance thing when you ruminate about a problem, because you're trying to get control over it and you're trying to see if you can we think ruminating is problem solving.
Yes.
Like, if you think about it enough times, we could solve this issue, right? We could figure it out. But when you look at the actual consequence of it, we're not getting anywhere, really. We're just making ourselves worked up and struggle more.
Which is
ruminate.
Maybe I like to think I'm pretty aware, and maybe that means that I'm not aware, because if I was aware, I'd realize that I'm not aware. Maybe it's some Dunning-Kruger stuff going on there. But that's what a lot of times I end up at, which leads me even more frustrated, because I'm like, dude, I've been ruminating about this for an hour. I realize no matter what I do, I can't change this insurance, or I can't change the wildlife in the backyard. Like, so why am I, now I've wasted an hour of my life ruminating about it, and I've gotten zero to show for it. You know better than that. The last 4 times this happened. So it creates like a cycle.
It does, yeah. And so I have to go back to like, okay, what can I do? What are some things? Can I accept it? You said writing emails doesn't work, right? I have to try to catch myself when I go in problem solving mode, because I think sometimes in therapy, and this is, I guess, going back to therapists, like the therapist part of me, there's part of me that wants to problem solve your situation, like right there, like I want to offer solutions. Like, okay, maybe try this, try that, right? Have you tried sending a letter in person, right? But at the end of the day, like, I got to take a step back and say, that is not our job. Well, at least from a therapist perspective, our job is not to solve the problems. Our job is to give the tools to someone else, give them the perspective to either accept or move forward in a way that they want to move, that's in alignment with their values.
Okay.
I just thought of something. I think that oftentimes, or at least these recent times, you brought me into it, and what we did is we kind of did a quick checklist. So you've done this, you did that. Is there anything else we can do? Knowing that then the email is just spinning your wheels. It's really not going to do anything. And in fact, it's going to create some circumstance where like, well, they're not answering yet. And I already sent that email and I sent another email. But I think you just made me think of that. And the other thing, a little bit more sarcastically, is it truly, I think at the root of this is that Dan cares deeply about his chickens.
This is not true. Don't get Mike started with this.
Thanks, Matt, for jumping right into that with me.
Of course.
So let's talk about that. What do you think? Thank you. What is it that you can take away from this in terms of Dan's relationship with his chickens?
Oh, God. Mike sends me these chicken gifs or chicken little videos probably like 3 times a day now of chickens just like bobbing their head to like these random songs.
They're awesome. They're incredible.
Mike lives vicariously through my chickens. He really wants chickens.
I do really want chickens. I don't think I can have them, but I live vicariously through Dan's passion for his chickens.
So you're okay with eating chickens then, right?
So
Like,
they're my
unfortunately,
girlfriend's
I am.
chickens. Let's get this. They're my
And their eggs.
and like if the raccoon got the chickens and I woke up to like dead chicken, I'd be like, okay, I wouldn't feel good about it. I'd be like, wow, that sucks, and I'd feel a little bit bad.
Yeah.
But it's more like waking up at like 3:30 in the morning, like in a good dream, just chilling, like, "Brah!" Like what in the world? I got to go figure it out. Like I got to go. Like
That's the end of part 1 of our interview with Matt Tapia. Perfectly ended, talking about Dan's chickens. Please make sure you do return for part 2 and...
Always analyze responsibly.
ABA on Tap is recorded live and unfiltered. We're done for today. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See you next time.